Welcome to Crypto Talk Radio, the podcast for everyday investors like you. Visit us on the web at cryptotalkradio.net. And now, here's your host, Leister.
Thank you for that, Bailey, and welcome everybody out there in Crypto Talk Radio, found at cryptotalkradio.net. I told you something's wrong with Davinci Jeremie, didn't I? Now you hopefully, if you watched his show to its fruition, to its duration, you understand why I was telling you something's not quite right with the guy. I'm going to do the best I can because I feel bad for him. Yeah, I shouldn't, but I do. I feel bad for him. He's not a very good orator. Look it up. He doesn't communicate very well. He doesn't have the gift of gab. He doesn't know how to vocalize and verbalize what it is that he's trying to say. I'm going to do what I can to try to help him. We also have, unfortunately, some very bad news for those that are in the SHIB ecosystem that you may not have known because you don't follow this stuff online or you don't go to Telescam or anything. You're outside of the bubble. You don't know what's going on. You're just looking at trades. And some scary stuff, not scary, but disturbing stuff has happened in the SHIB ecosystem. I'm going to be talking about that. I think it's important. I'm also going to be talking very briefly about BlockDAG, not to the deep nths, but sharing some thoughts. I already did some out of cycles about it, but I want to elaborate a little further. But the big part of today's episode, unfortunately, is going to need to be this chaos with the SHIB ecosystem, because as I said, I was a whale in bone. I'm not now, but at the time I was a whale in bone. So I kind of have a self-imposed obligation to do what I can to share my context with the community. And hopefully it will not scare you off, because I do think selling is a bad idea at this point, but if that's your choice, can't tell it, do what you cash. I am simply going to elaborate what went down, and then you can decide whatever it is you're going to do. We'll talk some numbers first, and then we'll get right into this chaos that happened. Coindesk.com. Let's go ahead and zoom out to the month chart for Bitcoin, although forever hold your peace, because what you see is likely to freak you out and cause you to panic sell, and I would hope you don't do that. But if you look at the month chart for Bitcoin specifically, the month chart for Bitcoin is dire. It is the sharpest downward trend one can imagine. The velocity of downward is significant. I kind of expected it, but I know various YouTubers told you that we were going to the moon in the short, and I said, feels like we need to go down first before we go up. Of course, that's Leister, you know. I try to keep people safe, but if you don't listen to me, you don't spread the word, we're going to have people get wrecked, right? So you have to kind of listen when I tell you these things, because I know they're more excitable. You know, they got their gimmicks, the cut, edit, and crazy, stupid lighting and, you know, neon signs. They got the whole nine. They got everything it takes to try to attract your attention. Just like insects to a bug zapper, you are drawn by what you see, the aesthetics of it all. And I would only challenge you, if you're new, welcome. I would challenge you to really think about the substance of what they're saying, contrast that with mine, because you'll find, I think, that I'm a little bit more level-headed, and in many cases, I'm pretty spot on. Not all, but in many cases, I'm spot on. I certainly was here, because I said, I think we need to go down before we go up, and I don't see this super high skyrocket yet. Not to say it won't, I just said not yet. I said we got to go down first. You know, I mean, it's a wave, right? It's always been a wave. I didn't understand it. And then some people said it's a black flag, aka false flag operation that was causing it. I can't say that's what was happening. I am going to say that in my mind, I did not see that same sentiment shifting in that direction. It felt like it was going the opposite direction in the short term. Over the past 24 hours, a low of just shy of 113 grand, a high of just shy of 117 grand. We currently are at 113 grand, headed downward, as I said, for Bitcoin. So again, I hope you don't panic sell, but I did want to level set you. Meanwhile, if you look at Ethereum's down and headed downward, but nowhere near as sharp as Bitcoin, which seems to substantiate my theory that Bitcoin was simply being influenced to some degree. Over the past 24 hours, Ethereum was just a little bit over $4,100, just shy on the 24-hour high, just shy of $4,400, but it's at the low end of that and headed down. Not as sharp as Bitcoin, but headed down. The Ethereum might have been a trap. You know, that might have been just trapping people in there at the highs. Could have been that. Could have been people that bought at the top when Ethereum had been running up. Because remember, it almost got to its all-time high again. And that was 2021. So it could have been people that just bought at the top and were trapped all this time or waiting to sell out. That's why I suspected we needed to go down before we go up, because there's going to be a lot of those people on both sides of the aisle, Bitcoin and Ethereum alike. So I was not surprised at what I saw. I would be surprised if Bitcoin was able to run back up strongly. Not to say it won't, but I would be surprised. It would surprise me, and I am looking forward to it. We'll just have, time will tell whether that's going to be the case in the long term. MicroStrategy has a major stock drop, and this was the larger economy, the larger markets. Everything was down. It was not just cryptocurrency, but MicroStrategy, aka Strategy, of course, put their all in. They went YOLO in for their Bitcoin stash. They've been buying and buying and buying and buying and buying. And then, of course, their stock, it's going to start to the point where their stock runs lockstep with performance with Bitcoin. And so you have to kind of watch and see if there's a little bit of trap on Bitcoin. If it does go to the 80,000 that I was kind of estimating, what would that do to MicroStrategy stock? And then what happens as a result of that drop? Are people going to dump out because they're nervous about what's happening? The volatility might be too much for some. And so MicroStrategy now has become a model to watch for price movement and sentiment, and use that as a guiding force for your decisions. I can't tell you what to do. I'm saying that everything that we see here seems to indicate that MicroStrategy now is subject to the whims of at least partially, the decent side with Bitcoin and the centralized side with the exchanges. And that's going to affect anybody who's in the stock. So if you jumped in the stock simply because they were skyrocketing because of the Bitcoin linkage, you're now seeing the inverse effect of that. And we have to see what that looks like long term. It could be that it keeps going up and up and up, and this dip is not a big deal, or it's going to have a major problem in the long run. But in the short term, yes, it is going to be pain. I don't see that, Saylor is, going away from it. It seems like they're going to, they're keeping on with what they're doing. So I don't see that they are concerned, but it's something for the investors, and that's a whole different ballgame to be worried about, I would think. The state of Wyoming becomes the very first public entity to participate cryptocurrency full stop, because they've just issued, or have launched, I should say launched, not issued, launched a state-issued stable token, fully fiat-backed, called the Frontier Stable Token. They're launching this on multiple different blockchains: Arbitrum, Avalanche, Base, Ethereum, Optimism, Polygon, and Solana. Notice, if you will, that the ones that they're launching on, the specific ones that they're launching on, are the strong ones. They're the ones that have strength. They're the ones that have good traffic. They're the ones that have good sentiment, almost to a T, almost all of them. The only one I would be concerned about in this list will be Polygon, but I think it's good that they're doing it because it sets a precedent, and I think it's solid. Now, the question is how that affects taxpayers, right? Is it using taxpayer funds to do that? It's obviously money they already had because it's fiat backed. The question is, what's the impact on taxpayers? Being a stable coin that is pegged to actual real world fiat, in theory, should contribute to stable price movement. However, you still have the risk, and it's a real risk. And I would say Base in particular is subject to this, and probably Solana. You do have the real risk of, in order to maintain that parity between the two, something has to make sure that the amount of tokens is balanced according to the amount of assets that it's backed to. They're working with a number of different organizations to make sure this is successful. I'm saying that there's still at least a risk, however small or large, there's still at least a risk of things getting kind of out of whack. And so it's going to need to be managed, is my point. It's going to need to be taken care of. I do think it's a good thing. You do have to be concerned about, privacy, the ability to have it be frozen. There's all those other, risks because there's no federal oversight about it. And if, what about some other state that doesn't support cryptocurrency, but their state citizen purchased this one? There's a lot going on. This allegedly is going to be launching on the Kraken exchange. Kraken is based out of Wyoming. So that was probably one of the impetus drivers for moving forward with this, was having an exchange actually locally there that would support such a thing. So you can't buy it yet. That's why I said it's not really issued. You can't buy it yet, but it is something that they've already set up a whole team. They set up an office, a new officer, the whole nine for this stable coin that they've got going on. So keep your eyes out for that one. Now, I'm going to be talking about this Davinci Jeremie chaos. And I've got a delivery driver on their way. So I'm going to let the delivery driver drop their stuff off. And then I'm going to talk about Davinci Jeremie because I want to help Davinci Jeremie. He needs help. Something's wrong with the guy. The thing is, I don't fully disagree. It's just, there's something wrong with him in the way he's talking. And, when you have money, you can do that. He did make some mentions that gave the impression that he may not be as rich as he presented in some of his floss videos, on the boat with the girls and all that. He's married, by the way. So he mentioned some stuff here that gave the impression he may not be as rich as possible because he talked about, buying a house and don't buy a multi-million-dollar house, put it in your name. And he gave the impression that he lost a house. I don't know how that happens. How would you lose a house? And why would you lose a house simply because your name's on it? My only thought is tax ducking. But if he bought the house in Dubai, I don't know how that happens. So how else would you lose the house? You either lose it because you didn't pay for it or you lost it because of taxes. It can only be one of the two, I would presume. Or maybe somebody tracked him down, right? Because he was flossing and flossing his money. Like that other, what was it, Amaranth or whatever? The other girl where they're flossing all their wealth and then somebody comes and runs up on them. Maybe that's what happened. Point is that he was giving out warnings about putting homes in your own name if it's a multi-million-dollar house, and because that's public record. So somebody can look up your name. They can tie your name to your address and they tie it. You've given your name online. So now you floss that you got millions of dollars and all this crypto. And so then somebody can they don't even have to try hard. They just know exactly where you are and come right after you. That's your security system may or may not work for you. If you don't hire a guard, like I would think somebody like him would have hired a guard. He said that at a point, when Bitcoin hit $1,000, which was a long time ago, he said he sold quite a bit of it. So that gave me the impression. I wonder how much he had, right? Because he bought it. I think he said he bought it was $1. And I could have sworn he said he put like $100 or something in it. So, but he said he sold a lot. So I don't know how much he really walked away with. I'm getting the impression that maybe he was not nearly obviously he got some windfall, but I'm wondering if he didn't get nearly as much as he presented himself with his floss videos. That's my point. Just the way he was talking. But then near the end, he started answering questions to his detriment, because I think it was a bad decision, but he started answering questions from his crowd. And some of the people were talking about the true identity of Satoshi and the idea or the theory that Satoshi might actually be female. And somebody talked about the voice of Satoshi. I don't know how they heard that, but they were thinking that Satoshi might actually be some sort of introverted girl that just happened to be good at coding. This is where it went all south for Davinci Jeremie, because he started sharing his thoughts and he was pretty clear that this is what he believes. He was not joking. He was dead on serious about how he thinks and how he believes. And again, I kind of sort of see where he's coming from, but he is not a good orator. He does not communicate well. And so I'm going to try my best to translate what I'm pretty sure he was trying to say without defending it. But I'm going to try to translate what he was trying to say. You got to keep in mind that when you get a certain level of wealth, this kind of thought process is normal. That's just the truth of it. If you have any sort of business, something, this is your kind of your thought process. So that's why I can translate, because I can sense what he was trying to say. So I'm going to do that. But first, we're going to go through snippet by snippet, and it won't take too long because we obviously need to get to the real chaos with Bone and the SHIB ecosystem, which is a lot worse, but I want to be mindful of and respectful of him and give him the proper time to make sure I talk about all this stuff properly and I do not misquote him and I do not misstate it. So here's the first one that he put his foot in his mouth over.
Or if no woman is smart enough or suave enough to be Satoshi. Misandry, name one candidate, right? I mean, come on, man. Yeah. Like really? Really? It's just not in female nature. Just accept it. It's not anything wrong with that, right? Accept the realities that men produce goods and services for everyone, and women, right, help us expand the society.
So, you know what he's getting at, right? It's clear what he's getting at. And this is why I say he put his foot in his mouth. He shouldn't have been talking like he did, but he did. It is what it is. Hey, let's see what I can do. I'm not sure I can salvage this one, but let's see what I can do. So the idea that men produce goods and services and women help us, essentially, he's basically saying that women are for procreation. That's it. Bottom line is what he's getting at. Women are there to give birth, birthing people, right? According to the White House, they're there to help sow the royal oats. They're there to help us. He actually threw help us in there because he knows it's a two-way street. Help us, spread our oats and get children and grow the empire. But we produce the goods and services. That's basically what he's saying. Now, is he right in what he says? No, because let's not forget, it was a woman who created the actual flag, our United States flag. It was a woman who's depicted as Lady Liberty for a reason, okay? It was a woman who's created some of our greatest compositions. It was women who've created a lot of our scripts for some of our greatest movies and TV shows. It was women who they've been comedians, they've been actors, they've been manufacturers at points, they have been nurses, doctors, you name it. Women have been producers. They have produced goods and services the same as men. What he was trying to say, and sucks at trying to do it, is that there are certain trades that women are tuned to that men are not, and converse is the truth, that there are certain trades that men are tuned to that women are not. One of my ancestors worked the railroad. He actually died. He was smashed between trains. He worked the railroad. He worked the hard labor, actually out on the actual tracks. Women were not working those roles because of the danger. They knew that it was dangerous and they were trying to protect the women because physically they were not able to work in those conditions. We see today, like referees, and they're trying to impose women into these types of trades, but there are still trades where it's obviously a man doing it. Another story that I have. When I was much younger, I worked at Staples for all of 2 weeks. You're laughing. You're like, no, I literally was 2 weeks straight up. Because when I applied, and this is when I was really young, I was like fresh out of high school. I think I was in my early 20s. When I applied, I straight told them, look, computers is what I do. I see you have a computer section. I see nobody's manning it. I can work computer section and I will excel there. They said, yep, sound good. Okay, so they did the orientation, go through the whole thing. They did not assign me to the store I wanted. They assigned me to a completely different store, Kearney Mesa. So I had to actually get a car because I was far away. The one that I wanted was walking distance plus bus if I had to, right down the road. Everybody knew where it was. I could get a ride. It was easy. And they didn't assign me there. They assigned me to this one that was distant because they had the need. I get there and the first thing they do is put me in the stock room. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, we need some men to lift the stuff because for them, and this is Staples, and I'm pretty sure it's still the case, there's a bias of putting the girls on the cash registers and putting the guys on the heavy lifting stuff. Why? Because in their minds, this is the trades, right? The trade bias is that the girls are in the safe positions and the guys are in the dangerous positions. Now, you think like UPS drivers. There's some really tanky looking women that work UPS and they deliver heavy packages and they can handle it perfectly fine. Junk haulers and garbage people and all that there's hunky women that do it, but statistically it is the exception, not the rule. That's what he's trying to say that he sucks at saying, is that statistically certain roles are simply more appropriate for men versus women and vice versa. Now, when you talk about Bitcoin and this Satoshi, well, the idea that the woman could not have written what we ended up with the white paper and everything, well, let's process that. What would it take for somebody to be doing that? They'd have to have been completely in sight of a future state where this could be successful. The original Bitcoin was flawed. It was heavily flawed. So is it possible that a woman did do it? Absolutely, because it was flawed, right? They didn't get everything perfect. They made mistakes. If we go by what Davinci's saying, the initial round of Bitcoin should not have been so tumultuous. That resulted in Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV and Bitcoin Gold, etc. We would not have had to fork it off. We would not have had that disruption that we had early on, if we go by what Jeremie's saying. But the fact that it is flawed opens the opportunity that it could have been a female simply because they might not have been as in bed with that technology as they might have thought they were. So they might have had a good idea and maybe they partnered with somebody else and maybe that somebody else was the guy. There's no way to know because the bottom line is it was not perfect out the gate. And he's saying, well, the way that it turned out, because his site is based on what we ended up with, not what we started with. But the fact that it was flawed opens all sorts of floodgates of who that might have been. I still come back to what the hell does it matter, right? Who cares who Satoshi was at this point? Satoshi took the money. Satoshi's sitting on billions and billions of dollars worth of tokens. And there's still that concern that Satoshi just shows up one day and dumps on the whole thing. That is still a real risk. But I was still just having a laugh at Davinci Jeremie, especially in this part here, this notorious part here.
Right? And she could program Bitcoin, but just probably not as well as a man would have done it.
So once again, he's going off of the quality of skill, right? How talented, the capabilities, and he's in his mind saying that the woman could not have done it because of the nature. And again, he's going off the bias of what he knows now of Bitcoin, not the flaws of what was. This is what I'm saying, that the flaws of what was opens the door that anybody could have done it. Somebody could have just got lucky. Somebody could have just said, I'm throwing out a BS idea, and somebody else, because it took iterations. There was multiple changes. There were things that happened after the fact, after Satoshi disappeared, that got it to the point of where it is now. That's my point, is that anybody could have created that initial set. It was just an idea. Anybody can create an idea. It had nothing to do with gender. The idea itself was a radical idea, no different than the idea that we once scoffed at, that the internet itself could be the way that we work. We scoffed at that at a point. There was a time when we scoffed at the idea of video phones. There was a time when we scoffed at the idea of self-driving cars. There was a time when we scoffed at the very notion, the very basic notion that cash would start to be replaced by debit cards. People distrusted these things when they were claimed and said, this is something that we could do. They distrusted it. Now we take it for granted. He's biased, but he's also kind of jaded. He doesn't get it because he's going off of his bubble, the Bitcoin bubble. His bubble is that now this is what Bitcoin is. And as a result, I'm making these statements about what Bitcoin was, which is faulty because it's not true. It just simply isn't.
In general, women are not better than men in general, period. It's not a negative. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said that. Yeah, no, you heard that. You heard that. It's on his live. Go ahead and look. If you don't believe me, he said that. He said that. Because what it's a wide swath. It's a wide stroke. He is painting a wide picture that doesn't make any sense. He's just painting himself further into a trap because there's so many different diverse things. You cannot just broad stroke it that way and say women are just not better than men. Like you can't, because I'm going to tell you straight up, there's not a chance now it's a different era. I'm talking back in my day. There was not a chance in hell. I know how to sew. Okay. I know how to sew. There's not a chance in hell I could out sew a female back then. It was never going to happen. You absolutely not. Now, will we talk cooking? I've already proven nobody can touch me on the cooking. That's just the bottom line. And that's the way it is. But that's not because of gender. That's just because I got skills to pay the bills. And most girls have not been trained to properly cook like they used to be in the olden days because we've demonized home ec, right? Home ec was the quality of preparing a woman to be a homemaker. It taught you all these different skills that I discussed, the sewing, the cooking, the cleaning, the house and taking care of the home and everything else that no longer is a priority for many women. Many women are trying to go into the workplace and be achievers. I've known tons of women that are PhDs and they're making bank six figures, almost $1 million. They are not struggling for anything and they're not struggling for talent. And they've chosen a path that is different than what Jeremie's implying. So all the people and he knows that though, right? He knows when you take somebody like a Candace Owens, no matter what you think of her as a person, her qualifications far exceed anybody, Davinci Jeremie or otherwise. It's not even close. Megyn Kelly's qualifications exceed. There are tons of women out there whose qualifications and skills, talent exceed him. He knows that, right? He is not accounting for them, though. He's only going off the low-hanging fruit that he encounters on a daily basis with his money. You see where I'm going with it? The money you throw around, that's what you're going to attract. You're going to attract the bottom of the barrel because that's all you're finding. You're finding the people that want your cash, not the people that got their own bank. See, that's the key. That's how you know somebody is a mover and a shaker. You attract the ones who are making, if not the same, more money than you. That's when you are really a baller. You're not a baller just because you toss money around and floss money around and invite these, I'll call them what they are, hoes that just want your cash. You know, the gold diggings. You're not a baller. You're just a guy, right? And that's cool if that's what you want to do. But because you're judging based on that caliber of woman, you're biased and you don't have the same perspective. You're flawed in what you're thinking because the tier of woman that you attract is flawed and you're comfortable there. And so for you, that is normal. It's not really normal. Normal is to attract women who make as much as you or more, or you can see they have the capacity to make as much as you or more, and they're willing to let you help them get to that level. And then in return, they're giving it back to you. They're the ride or die chick. They're on your side because you help them get to that and they don't stab you in the back. That's rare. That's why many men don't date, because they're looking for that, because they know that's the gold. Why the hell do you think Jay-Z hooked up with Beyonce? It damn sure wasn't because of her looks. She might have been attractive, but I'm saying that wasn't why he did, because he had balling women, Foxy Brown, freaking Maya, Aaliyah. You go down the list, he had a choice and he chose Beyonce. Why? Because of every woman I just mentioned, she was the one that was banking already. She was already bankrolling. He knew what it is. Everybody who is of that level, let's take the Jada and Will Smith situation. Jada Pinkett Smith herself said, I just wanted to go somewhere on some, mountain, just the two of us, because they were both bankrolling. She was bankrolling. He was bankrolling. He had more than she did. He said, okay, I want to throw my money at this girl. Later, after they kind of get used to each other, she realizes it ain't about the money. We got to make sure we get along. And they turn out they don't get along. So Will's throwing money and it's not doing any good. Why? Because she was from that tier. She was from that bottom tier who would just hang out with the dudes. And that's all she was until she started getting famous. And then her mind shifted. Well, now she's trying to create a career. She's trying to get this thing. Then they get pregnant. Now she's got to flip it again. And she's no longer what she was. Well, here's the thing. I am not going to criticize at all. Ironically, I'm not going to criticize Jeremie for what he feels. What he feels is what he feels, and he has every right to feel and think what he feels. I'm saying that he's flawed in what he feels and what he thinks, and it's because of the types of women he hangs around with, which is all he's exposed to. He doesn't know any different. He doesn't know any better. He doesn't know that there are successful women out there and they have exceeded him. He would then Chewbacca and say, well, yeah, but it's improbable. It's da-da-da-da. No, it's not. It's not. He's in Dubai. He knows this. Dubai has countless of this. He knows it, but he's in denial because he's in a bubble because of the kind of women he chooses to cavort with. He is just in that denial state. So here's where I agree partially with something of what he's trying to say conceptually. What he's trying to say really has to go with what I said before. Traditional, let's say the trad wife trend, right? Why did the trad wife trend start to become a more of a thing? It's because stats have shown that when you behave like a traditional wife, what's the saying? Happy wife, happy life. Generally speaking, when you play that role, which means you give up your career, effectively, you're giving it up. You might still work, but you're not the full career, at least not when you're early on with your kids. You're having to sacrifice that. You need to see to the children. You don't really have a personal life of note. Michelle Obama talked about this. If you adopt that, then you're gambling. Essentially, you're gambling on this guy is going to take care of me as a result of me doing this for him. And I have to sacrifice, in some cases, 20 years of my life for this. And I've got to learn to embrace it. And I've got to learn to love it. Many women can't do that. They can't. It's for them, it is unacceptable to do that. They feel like they want to use their prime and maximize it, which is why so many women are out there trying to get those jobs. I've known CFOs and CEOs and everything female. I've known that. My client, the person who runs the group, is female. That's what it is. So my point is, I agree conceptually with the idea that we have lost this element of traditional mentality of the way women used to work. And as a result of losing it and them working so hard to get into those situations of leadership and ownership and running the game and everything else, there's a pushback from men. The pushback is to try to suppress their ability to get into those roles and keep them to be, I don't want to say subservient, but keep them second tier, keep them just a level below. And so they have to fight that much harder to get above that thresh. Then when they get above that thresh, they start, some of them, not all, they start turning into that combative, you men were suppressing us this long, so now we have to kind of get back at you. It's a two-way street. It's a two-way battle. So there is the idea that battle, that fight, that dog eat dog, that competitive spirit, statistically, it is true. Men are going to be more competitive in trying to be the leader, in trying to be the boss, in trying to be number one. They're hungrier, generally speaking. They're the ones that are willing to they're the ones that'll say, I'll work any damn job. I'll go be a janitor as long as you pay me. That's generally statistically men. Statistically, women are not going to be willing to go that low for a job. Some of them will turn to other types of things like escorting or whatever, OnlyFans or something to make money because they can't bring themselves to work certain types of jobs. This goes back to the types of roles that we talked about. So in that regard, only that regard, I agree. The idea that there are certain types of trades, as I said, where men are willing to just do it because they're hustlers. That's what men, real men are. I'm not talking the man bun, skinny jeans type dudes. I'm talking real men. We're hustlers. We do what we got to do to get stuff done. And we're not going to let anybody stop us from that. And we have no problem in a dog eat dog world fighting that battle to get to the top. We don't mind competing. We don't mind fighting. We don't mind applying and selling ourselves, most importantly. Whereas, and you can search this yourself, don't believe me, women statistically are not willing to go that hard like men do. That is statistically true. That's the only thing of what he's trying to say that I agree. Everything else, the guy is out of his freaking mind. Let's move on. Let's talk about the SHIB ecosystem, because the SHIB ecosystem is in trouble, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're in the SHIB ecosystem, I'm not trying to tell you that everything's all lost. It's a lost cause. You're all toast. That's not what I'm saying, but it's looking bad and it's getting worse. What happened? I did an out of cycle about Leash. Feel free to check that out. Turns out it's worse than that. The summary of it is that somebody had put out a post about alleging that there was some minting going on of Leash. Leash has allegedly a fixed supply. The devs came out, they put a Medium post up, and they talked about that it was a one-time something. It turns out it was not a one-time something. Somebody else had leaked, spilled the beans, and said that no, it's a 10% every day, and it's from the rebase, and it's from code that was there. The devs apparently came back and admitted that there was somehow the way the contract was written, I want to try to keep it simple, but somehow the way the contract was written, they had built the rebase in a way where the main contract was actually renounced, but they left whitelisted addresses that were able to call the rebase function. That's unthinkable, but there's no way that was accidental. That was done on purpose. And so somebody broke down, there's no way somebody would have left a whitelist function to be able to call a rebase function after this was allegedly renounced, unless they knew that they were going to try to trash the project. Somebody made the statement that there was allegedly some dev, woof, something or other. This is what I was told, that this dev was doing it in order to kind of hold them hostage for something. It's a whole big chaotic nightmare. But suffice to say that there are addresses whitelisted that were allowed to call the rebase function, and that's what happened. They called and turned it on, and so now it's been printing 10% every day. And this is consistent. It's not a one time. The devs announced that they're going to be launching a V2 of Leash to try to fix it and do a new contract that does not have the rebase function at all. And again, feel free to, and I do encourage you, check out that Leash out of cycle that I did. It more specifically breaks down this event. And then check out a video we did about Laika, Laika, because that goes into details about the rumor that this would happen, as well as the rebase and everything else. It's a whole big chaotic nightmare. However, when this happened, so now the sentiment is at all-time rock bottom, because Leash was supposed to be the rewards token for this whole thing, only to have them launch Treat and say it's the rewards token. Oh, and then Bone, which has been struggling, Bone is actually paired to Leash. I looked at the pairing. The pairing has a market cap of $21 billion, which is extremely improbable, because if you look at all the other exchanges, it's like in the millions of dollars. There's no way it's got $21 billion of market cap to it, which tells me that one of the two in that pool is artificial. And it now tells me it's likely going to be Leash. So if you look at what the market cap's doing and you look at the rebase mechanic, it tells you, it gives you a good sense of what really was going on. That it was always intended to inflate up to a point at some point. And they did the whitelisting to try to just schedule it in advance. So now it's executed. Now it's turned on. Now it's going down. So now you've got Shibarium, which nobody uses. Shiboshis, which nobody cares and has no value. The Shibaverse, or whatever that is, where they were doing like land sales or something, and they wanted ETH, not SHIB, not Bone. They didn't want the actual native tokens. They wanted actual ETH for these land plots that are essentially worthless. So Leash is losing value because it's printing out of control. Bone has no value. It's been crapping like crazy despite run-ups of Ethereum. Treat never got off the ground really hardly. SHIB's all they really have left. SHIB is the one that the devs said they have no control over, and that the exchanges maintain control over because it's too far out there. That's why I said, I mean, what do they have left? They really have nothing left. They don't have anything that they can use to supplant this at this point, because there's been so much damage done. And I'm going to make a statement, and I don't have evidence. I'm making a statement using correlation. The timing of this rebase event correlating so closely to the departure of Satoshi as leader, I find very suspicious. The Cologne scented book for 1 ETH, trying to sell the SHIB metaverse land, and they only want ETH. Then the printing out of control of Leash, the suppression of Bone. And Bone, by the way, is not fully renounced. There was a convoluted tree, a top dog, and all these other things in front of it. Then they got rid of part of it, and that other controller, they said the keys were burned. And this person said what I've been saying, which is the whole keys are burned. That's a trust me, bro type mentality that you should not trust. And I've said that. So as far as I can tell, right now, you got Bone. It's not really renounced. It really isn't. And there could be some influence going there. You got Leash printing out of control. Allegedly a V2. That's going to harm sentiment. It'll pump and dump, but it's going to harm sentiment. SHIB is the only thing left. It doesn't do anything. Shiboshis, nobody cares. SHIB Metaverse, nobody cares. Shibarium, nobody cares. It's been left behind. It's been left in the dust. One of the most actively pursued projects. Literally, the hype was crazy for years. And then now, where's it go? I don't know. I'm sharing so that you understand. The SHIB ecosystem is in dire straits because of unforced errors, I guess is the word, from the team over time. And nobody knows. I'm just saying from my lens, and I have no evidence, but from my lens, it all points at Satoshi, because Satoshi is the key behind everything that's gone wrong. So those people who celebrate the guy as a god or girl as a god, those people who pat themselves on the back and say this is the winning ecosystem, those who said that SHIB is going to be the next currency, those who said that the SHIB ecosystem is going to take over the world, you are now seeing the net effects of the last remaining holdout. Other than Floki, this is probably the last remaining holdout from that era, the end of an era. And the next era is already taken over. There's so many other projects that have stolen liquidity from the SHIB ecosystem. And you shouldn't be satisfied with that, but that's the truth of what has happened. So this has been a rough 24 hours. It's, Davinci Jeremie basically exposing himself. I don't want to say misogynist. He just doesn't know how to explain stuff. But he's exposed himself as somebody who's in a bubble himself. He's in a Bitcoin bubble, straight up. He's in a manhood bubble, for sure. And then the stuff with the SHIB ecosystem, all that at once. It's chaos, right? And the price of stuff crapping down. Leister, of course, at CryptoTalk.fm told you that was likely to happen. I wasn't sure, but I said likely. And again, I'm still targeting 80. It feels like 80. I don't know for sure. It just feels like it, right? So all the YouTubers that told you, nope, it's time for 250, do. I guess my message in closing is to make sure that, maybe you need to be a little bit more studious about who you choose to listen to and spread the word and just say, this guy Leister, he's telling the truth and he's down to earth and he's level headed and he covers it straight up. He's not the hypester. He's not the garbage shilling. He doesn't talk the nonsense. He just says it straight. And share that, let other people experience what that's like to just hear somebody that's like you. Because that's what I am. I'm an investor like you. I don't go all deep because I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for price drops. I know it's weird, but that's what I'm doing. I'm waiting for price drops because that's what I do. I wait for price drops and then I buy in if it makes any sense. And then I take profits. I don't do it as the long play like many. I don't gamble, roll the dice. I don't do that. Anyhow, I'm straight up with you. I'm always going to be straight up with you. And I think we're fine overall, at least some of us, not Jeremy, but some of the rest of us are fine. And then as far as cryptocurrency, I'm still going to target 80 for Bitcoin. I feel it. It's a sentiment. It's only sentiment. I have no real structure to that. It just feels that way. It feels like artificial. It just feels like it's not real, and I think, Q4 will be interesting overall. I think if the Fed, starts to drop rates, that's going to be interesting to look at. We got a lot of things on deck to look at. The President Trump trying to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine. That might have some positive. That might be one of the catalysts behind the minimum movement of Bitcoin for all we know. So overall, we have a lot going on, and I think it's a good thing. And then the last point is BlockDAG, and I shared an out of cycle on that. Check that out about the photos, and then CoinMarketCap has the rest of the photos. But suffice to say that these are real people in the BlockDAG. If any of them hear this episode, whoever you partnered with for your marketing, you've made a bad mistake. You made a terrible mistake. Because I honestly think that you think you have something. I think you do. I think you have something. But you're being presented as scammers at this point. It's just everything with the pre-sales and the bonuses and everything else. It's not looking good. And if it's what you like, that's fine. But I would rather see that you're a little bit more serious about what you do. And the reason I say that goes to another out of cycle that I'm going to do after this one. I'm not going to do it here. I'll do it in out of cycle. But with the Monero Cubic 51% and Kraken situation, allegedly they're going to target Doge next. They were thinking about Caspa next. They were thinking about Pi next. If you guys are smart, again, if you hear this, if you're smart, the best thing you can do is use that to your advantage. Talk about what you've done to protect yourself against such an attack. Now, I know you'll talk about the miners. You got to do more. And if you level set and talk about a maturity model, because that's the thing Pi lacked, right? As a maturity model. Talk about a maturity model and take a more mature approach to your messaging to try to appeal to those who might jump ship from those projects that are potentially at risk. Do I think that they're gonna take down Doge? No. But Pi I would consider to be at risk. Caspa, I don't know for sure, but Pi I would suspect to be at risk. Well, Pi is doing the same kind of mining stuff you're doing. That gives you an opportunity. If your people are smart enough, you'll leverage that opportunity. But it's going to start with coming with a more serious tone to what you do. And if you don't do that, I can't say what's going to happen. I'm just saying that's my recommendation to you is get more serious about what you're doing if you really want to attract people. It seems like you do, but your website doesn't give that impression. Your marketing doesn't give that impression. So it's up to you. If you really want to make this thing succeed, you're not going to get 600 million, at least not in the short term. So unless you get realistic about it, you're not in the course correct, because now's the time to do that and fix it. I don't see you go anywhere. Big picture though, cryptocurrency's in a weird spot. Everything's weird. It's weirder than 2021. And maybe we just need guidance from the feds, the rate cuts, getting more money back into people's hands, home buying and selling kind of traffic. So I think a lot of that plays in, people that they might want to do like a home equity loan or line of credit and use some of that to get into crypto. I feel that we've got to get more money in people's hands, real money, buying power. And I think when you do that, we're going to start seeing some major shifts in price. And I think it's a powder keg. I truly do. But I still maintain it feels like we have to go down before we get to go up. What do you do about that? Whatever it feels like doing. But for me, I'm just waiting for a discount and then I buy more, because that's the simplest thing to do. The worst thing you could do is buy high, but I understand. Some people can't resist the temptation of the green candles.